I'm Rohan Samarajiva. I've been leading the work on this project where we've been looking at what lessons can be learned from international practice and good practice everywhere for Indian broadband policy and regulation funded by the Ford Foundation. What seems to be is that in 2014 we are quite sure that there's going to be a new government. Whichever party wins, it will be a new prime minister, a new set of actors. And I think it's a very good opportunity, what we describe in the literature as a policy window, where new information, good information can be brought to bear, either directly absorbed by the decision makers or by stakeholders who are contributing to the public policy process. And India, as we know, has got consultation papers, open house procedures and so on. So it's possible that there are avenues for this information to come in. So as part of this work, we at LIRNEasia have looked at how the Indian broadband initiatives have been going. There has been a lot of planning with the focus on the domestic backhaul component connecting the block to the Gram Panchayat level. The expenditure was supposed to be about $4 billion coming from the Universal Service Fund. Procurement delays have caused this to be delayed, in the sense that what was supposed to be done by 2 years will now most probably take 4 years or maybe a little bit more. So what we have been doing is we've been looking at other countries, not the developed countries, not the United States or places like that, but people who are more or less in the Asia Pacific, who have been working on broadband initiatives at the national level. So we've done case studies on Malaysia, Indonesia, and also very prominent case of broadband initiative, Australia. In all these cases, we have tried to identify the possible lessons that could be drawn, the possible mistakes to avoid, and so on. One of the more interesting things is that, of course, India faces extraordinary challenges with its very large population, and much of this very large population living in rural areas that are barely reached by narrow band voice connectivity today, but who have to be reached by some form of broadband connectivity for the various promises that have been given by all the political parties who are contending in this election to provide e-government services, health services, agricultural services, and so on, using this new mechanism of connectivity. So it is very, very important that attention be paid on how we can cost effectively. We must remember, money is not an unlimited item. So cost effectively connect these places, either through common access centers of various kinds, or even through smartphones or tablets or low-cost computers of various kinds. So there's a lot of work to be done, and what we believe, some of the lessons that need to be drawn, are we have to address the problem of having competition in the access network. That is, I don't think we should make the mistake of trying to recreate a sort of a government supply monopoly when it comes to the customer. So the customer must have a choice. There must be incentive for different private suppliers to be responsive to customers, to give them good prices, to give them good services, and so on. But however, on the other side, they have a big cost item in connecting to the worldwide internet. That is, getting from the rural village to the panchayat level, to the block level, to the metro centers, where, for example, you need to get to a cable landing station, and then from the cable landing station you need to go to what we call the internet cloud. all these things are cost components. So if you look at the whole supply chain, or when we use the word chain, very clearly we have the question of a metaphor, of an analogy. A chain is as strong as the weakest link. That means for the internet to be fast, the really important factor is which of these components is the slowest, because that will be the speed that will define the user's experience. Which of these elements is the most expensive? If that element is expensive, the operators will have to economize on that, which will degrade the user experience or will raise the prices, one of the two. So we have to look at all these components, and one of the things that was done in the study was we looked at Malaysia, where they had looked at all parts of the supply chain. They actually invested in a new international cable. They put money into domestic backhaul, and they even spent money not in the most rural areas, but where there's a high population density and where there was industrial concentration and purchasing power. They put money into putting fiber to the home in those areas. So when you look at that, and then in addition, they even invested in various kinds of awareness campaigns, broadband carnivals they call them, things of that nature, to actually create the demand on the other side, to create various attractive content. So if you look at the Malaysian case, I think there are a number of lessons that could be drawn. But I think it's very important for one government agency not to overstretch, not to take on too much, because we must remember the Bharat Broadband organization, a special purpose vehicle, is actually quite a small organization. It doesn't have thousands and thousands of employees. So I think it's very important that they focus on one thing, which is to provide the backhaul and allow the existing private operators, or even if you want to license more, that's up to the government of India. Let those people do the interaction with the customers, and they should focus on this part. And if the government wants, there might be value in having other ways to encourage, specifically through civil society organizations, greater awareness of the internet and the value that it can bring. And in addition, of course, there is the question of making sure that there is attractive content and applications. We know that however much fiber we put in the middle mile, in the backhaul, the big pipes, in actual fact, people will be using the internet using mobile devices. When I say mobile devices, it could be a smartphone, it could be a tablet, it could be something like this Akash, simple laptop computers, any of these devices. So when we think about that, what we have to do is to make sure that we have apps, attractive content, make sure that local fonts are supported, local languages can be handled. There are a whole series of things that can be done, and I think the more stakeholders you bring into this, equipment manufacturers, civil society organizations, educational institutions, etc., that part of the what we call the demand side, the stimulation of demand, can also be done. So if you look at the whole ecosystem, which is making sure that the connectivity is available, making sure that the connectivity is affordable, and that's a supply side activity. That's where activities like the current Bharat Broadband or NOFN are going to play a role, and they should be enhanced, speeded up, made more efficient, and so on. We have to work with the handset manufacturers to make sure local languages are supported. Sometimes that certain kinds of applications are preloaded onto the handsets and so on, or terminals. I don't want to say handsets because it could be tablets, it could be laptops. And in addition, to the extent that voice recognition is possible, more and more of it should be deployed in the local languages, because the fact remains that India has a significant number of people who are not literate, who are not capable. I mean, they can talk, but they can't. They have difficulty reading and writing. So the way to get around that is to use technology for that purpose. So if you think of it as this ecosystem where each of these components has to move forward, then we will have a successful take-up of internet and all the benefits that it can give. The difference between our former success story of voice and the current, the success story we must achieve, which is broadband, is that in voice we really didn't have to worry about any of that. Most of us, or great majority of us, have no difficulty in talking and hearing what other people are saying. Even if, for example, our sight is impaired, we can talk. So for that reason, the mobile story did not actually need a large ecosystem. All it needed was that we gave the signal and the handsets were available and affordable. That's all that was needed. But now, with broadband, we have to think of an ecosystem and think of a whole series of actions that need to be run together. And the way to do that is not to overload one organization, but to have a division of labor where different organizations take their different parts and try to work with as many stakeholder groups as possible to leverage the strengths that they naturally have, and in a light way coordinate the entire process rather than try to centrally control everything. So I think if these things are done, if these points are realized, I think it will be very useful for developing broadband and giving the services that people want. And I think in this policy window that we have, the broadband resource repository that LIRNEasia has developed with the assistance of the Ford Foundation will be useful for anybody who's trying to play a constructive role in these oncoming discussions in order to provide good information in this policy window that we hope will help the Government of India and all the relevant actors provide the needed services to everybody in India, and especially the poor and the marginalized people.